Hello, my name is Danielle and I will be teaching you today how to determine the exact quadrant in which an angle lies based on given information. First, you're going to want to start with drawing your graph. And this will be 0 degrees, 90 degrees, 180 degrees, and 270 degrees. And you also want to remember when you have a graph, you have x and y coordinates. And on this graph, we have the unit circle graph, so this is going to be cosine for x and sine for y. And at 0, if we do 360-degree turn, 360 equals 2 pi. So we can say this is 2 pi. This is pi over 2. This is just pi. And down here we have 3 pi over 2. And that's just 270 degrees changed to radians right here. And same for these. Next, we want to remember that this is quadrant 1, this is quadrant 2, this is quadrant 3, and this is quadrant 4. And in each quadrant, we can recognize a pattern if we find the cosine and sine of, let's say, 0 degrees. So the cosine of 0 degrees is actually going to be 1, and the sine is going to be 0. And we can do that on our calculator as well. Cosine of 0 equals 1. And let's see, cosine of 90 degrees equals 0. So right here, we're at 0, and I know this already, but sine of 90 degrees is 1. But you can find all those on your calculator. At 180 degrees, we're at -1, 0. At 270, we're at 0, -1. And then we come around to 1, 0 right here. Now, if we wanted to say this is going to be 30 degrees. Now, the cosine of 30 degrees is going to look like that. So, we'll write right here 3 over 2, and then sine is just 1/2. And they're both positive there. In quadrant 2, we'll come over and we'll say this is 150. And at 150 in radians, we're at 5 pi over 6. And our cosine is negative square root of 3 over 2. And our sine is positive 1/2. So sine is actually still positive over here. If we come down here, and we measure 30 degrees less than 270, we're at 240, which is 4 pi over 3 in radians. And our cosine is going to be -1/2. Sine is going to be 3 square root over 2. Now, you can kind of see a pattern here. I used 30 degrees as a marker. So you can see square root of 3 over 2, 1/2, square root of 3 over 2, 1/2, 1/2, and square root 3 over 2. So let's move over to quadrant 4 and see what 330 degrees will look like. 330 degrees is 11 pi over 6, and the cosine is 3 square root over 2. Negative 1/2 is the sine. Now, if you can see somewhat of the pattern, if you continue on, and we can say all variables are positive here, sine is positive in quadrant 2, tangent is positive in quadrant 3, and cosine is positive in quadrant 4. And the way that you can remember this mnemonic is all students take calculus. And that's been really easy for me to remember. And you also want to remember that if sine is positive, then cosecant is going to be positive. If cosine is positive, then the reciprocal is also going to be positive. So we'll write the reciprocals intertwine together, meaning they equal the same value, positive or negative. So if your teacher was to ask you sine of theta is less than 0, which means sine is actually negative, and cosine of theta is greater than 0, then that means cosine is actually positive. Now, in which quadrant could we say that sine is negative and cosine is positive? Well, if we look, we remember that all students take calculus. The C is positive cosine. So, and sine is negative in quadrant 4. So for this question, we would be in quadrant 4. Now, if your teacher asked you tangent of theta is greater than 0 and cosecant of theta is greater than 0, which means this is positive and this is positive. And secant is the opposite of cosine, or cosecant is the opposite of cosine. So if that's positive and tangent is positive, the only place on here that has all positives is going to be in quadrant 1. So this is actually quadrant 1. And if you want to find out tangent, you actually just do sine over cosine. Now, I hope that was really helpful. It's helped me a lot during this course. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.